Well, men's mental health is a topic we should be talking about year-round, especially for single and divorced dads. So today we are joined by Dr. Erin Megan to help the conversation and keep that going. Now, you have a very credited background as a mental health professional, specifically for fathers. And during your research, what would you say led on to focusing on divorced fathers?
Really, two things. One is my own experience as a child of divorced parents, and the other is I do a lot of work on suicide prevention, especially in higher education, and got very alarmed when I learned the statistics about the suicide rates amongst divorced dads. They are about 4 times higher than, about 8 times higher than divorced mothers, about twice as high than any other marital status for a man. And it's just tragic. It's tragic, even if there's not a death by suicide, for dads to become disconnected from their kids. It's bad for the kids, it's bad for the dads, and I think ultimately bad for society.
Wow, Erin, thank you very much. We can relate. I'm also a child of divorced parents, so this is something that's equally as important to me as well. Why would you say divorcing dads are at such a high risk compared to other men or compared to divorcing moms?
You know, I think in the US in particular, men just don't tend to have a lot of close relationships outside of their family. And so once the family breaks apart and separates, men don't really often men don't know where to go for support, and they end up just alone in their head, often feeling useless, and sometimes getting very bad messages about who they are, and they start doubting their own sense of worth and their own importance in their kids' lives, and wonder, would it be better would it be better for everybody if I just wasn't here? Like, you can just kind of see it tumbling. And again, they just tend to not reach for support so easily, and that just makes all the difference. Women are much better at reaching out for support when necessary, and as a result, get the support that they need.
Would you say there's a pressure and a stigma that's associated with men versus women when it comes to divorce and just the mental health impact that it takes a toll on?
I think a lot of men, because they're worried about appearing vulnerable and appearing like they're going through difficulty, have a hard time, like I said, reaching out for support, and are often ashamed of what's happening or embarrassed about the separation, and just don't talk to anybody about it, just trying to appear strong along the way. And that ends up being really bad for them, because again, they're not getting any positive messaging during this time that can be very difficult for people's self-perception.
Yeah, and such a sudden thing in somebody's life with the family breaking apart and different things like that. So what are some good ways that we can support dads who are, experiencing divorce and just the mental health that has such an effect on them?
Yeah, the number one is being in touch. Just checking in on them. Be the person who's calling once a week to see how they're doing. And it doesn't have to be an in-depth, painful conversation every time, but just for them to feel like there's a connection and somebody who cares about them and thinks that they're a good person, and maybe suggesting other resources if things seem to be kind of sliding, but encouraging dads to connect as much as possible with support resources is really important, and reminding them that their kids will always benefit from having them in their lives. That's a critical message to maintain, because parents in general will do a lot of things for their kids that they would not just spontaneously do for themselves. And so reminding dads that to stay in their kids' lives is a service to their kids and will make their kids' lives better is such an important message for them to hear. So just reminding them of that consistently, and being that person that checks in, say, weekly, and seeing how they're doing.
Yeah, I think sometimes we can forget about that. We can forget about reaching out to the dads, right? A lot of us are like, how are the kids? How's this? How are you doing as dad going through this situation? So we just appreciate you and all your insight. If somebody is going through this right now and they could utilize some support, specifically, where do they go for more help?
Yeah, so a couple of suggestions. One is, I hope everybody knows about 988. It's a national service, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. You don't have to be suicidal to call. You can just be going through a hard time. It's free. It's available 24/7. It's an amazing service. So 988 available anytime. You can also call them if you're worried about somebody else, and they'll talk you through it as well. The other thing on my website, divorcingdads.org, www.divorcingdads.org. There are a few resources there, videos and blog posts, a support group for people that want to talk. We have a podcast where I interview dads as they're going through the divorce process to help people, part of the process, see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. People end up happier typically at the end, but it's a rough couple of years often on the way there. So these are the two.
Yeah, thank you so much. So many resources right there. So we just appreciate you, and you can see the website right there on your screen where you can go for more information. Thank you so much for joining us on such a crucial topic for dads who are going through the situation. So thank you. We appreciate you so much for joining us, and more Idaho Today coming up right after the break.